everybody. Happy first build show ever. I'm Lydia. Woo! I am Lydia, and some of you might know me as Drywall Shorty if you're on social media. And we're going to be doing Drywall 101 today. So I'm kind of going to be walking you why we use drywall, what's good about drywall, and then also we're going to go through the levels. So we're going to go through levels 1 through 5 today, which I know there's a lot of questions about. So I have a PowerPoint if you'd like to follow along. I'll kind of be referencing that here and there. And then I have a little mock-up wall here too that we'll kind of look at as we go through. So starting off, why drywall? That's a question I get a lot, like why not just plaster everything? Why do we need to use drywall? What are the benefits of using drywall? Drywall has fire resistive properties. So 5/8 inch drywall has 30 minutes or so of drywall resistive properties. You also need to think about your wall assemblies, if we're doing double 5/8 on both sides, but it does allow us some fire resistive properties. And that's important to remember if you're on multifamily. So anytime we are doing any kind of commercial jobs or jobs that have adjoining walls between 2 units, those are always 5/8. They have to be 5/8 for fire code. Also, when we are looking at garages, those typically are also 5/8, so you have that protection going from the garage into the house. It also is readily available. We have a lot of gypsum. The White Sands National Park is actually all gypsum. That entire thing is all gypsum. So it's a very easy to find resource. It's quick to finish using our modern tools. So we really moved from plaster to drywall to speed things up. Plaster takes a long time to dry. Back in the day, it would take 2, 3, 4 days for plaster to fully dry between coats. So now we can get everything done quickly. We're getting a coat a day, and then we're getting the house done, in a week compared to, say, 3 weeks, 4 weeks with plaster. And then it's easy to transport and install. It comes in a variety of sizes and widths. So if you are doing 9 foot, you're going to get 4.5 foot boards. And then if you're doing 8 foot, you're going to get 4 foot boards. And then that way you only have one seam. And the sheets are big, so usually we have a boom truck come. They drop the sheets off, the stalkers load it in, and then we get to hanging. So it's very easy to install, and it's pretty dang quick. Common drywall widths and sizes. So they go from 8 foot to 12 foot long. That's really important when you're looking at getting your board count and installing. If you have, say you have a huge wall and you have a bunch of 8 foot sheets, that's going to be extra seams that aren't needed. So if you're looking at large expanses, you're going to want to go with a larger board. The less seams, the less work. And I can't hit that enough. Don't be putting little scrap pieces of drywall in, because every piece of drywall is going to have to be finished. So if you can, do the biggest size that you can in the area to cut down on board joints. It's also available in 2 heights. So like I said, 48 for 8 foot and then 54 for a 9 foot ceiling. If you're doing anything like 12 or 14 feet, that's fine. Go with the bigger boards. They just cut them down and then you just have either a higher or a lower seam. But the less seams that you can make, the better for everyone. And then we have our different thicknesses. So there's a 1/4 inch, that's usually the thinnest. When you're looking at using 1/4 inch, that's going to be going around curves, domes. So if you have a big dome ceiling, you're going to be using a 1/4 inch drywall. Sometimes it's a double layer to get to that 1/2 inch thickness. But if you take a 1/2 inch board and try and hang it on a dome ceiling or an arch, it's going to crack. It doesn't have that flexibility. So you need to make sure you're using 1/4 inch there. And then 1/2 inch is very common. So most standard houses or spec houses have 1/2 inch drywall. It's great, it's fine, it's lightweight, it's easy to hang. Nothing wrong with 1/2. And then 5/8, when we're looking into getting these big custom builds like the stuff Matt does, any sort of commercial, multifamily residential, that's when we're moving to the 5/8 inch. And 5/8 is heavier, so you are going to have more of a hanging cost when it comes to 5/8. So if you are speccing and you're talking to your hangers and you're like, I'm kind of going back between 1/2 inch and 5/8, make sure you get 2 bids, because it's going to be different. It could be quite a couple $1,000 price increase, maybe more, depending on how many boards are in the house. So make sure you specify 1/2 inch, 5/8. 5/8 gives you a little more rigidity. across, like especially big expanses, big ceilings. So if you have a lot of big open ceilings, open spaces, 5/8 might be a better choice for you because it will give you a flatter ceiling. Factors that will affect your drywall price. 5/8 or 1/2 inch, that will be a price difference for sure. Vaults, high ceilings, and complex framing. I get it. Everybody loves these big spaces. Everybody wants these huge expanses. You want the 14-foot doors. You want, 3-story stairwells that go up and skylight at the top. It's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you a lot more because you have to think we have to touch every single part. Those walls, those ceilings, we have to figure out how to get up there because we got to hang the board up there. So all of those things all factor into your price because if we're having to come in and build a set of scaffolding, that's going to take up, could take a whole day, sometimes more, to figure out how to get things where they need to go. So think about that when you're getting your pricing and when you're looking at building a house. What level finish? This is super important. If you come to me and you're like, I want you to do my drywall, and I give you a price, I maybe am thinking you're going with the level 3 and we're texturing. In your mind, you're thinking level 5, perfect, smooth. Totally different ballgame. Like way different prices here. When we're looking from going to a 3 to a 5, that's an additional 2 coats. An additional 2 coats is probably going to be an additional 3 to 4, maybe 5 days. So when we're looking at pricing, make sure you're specifying and you're really on track with your drywall contractor about what level you're expecting, what finishes you're expecting, because we don't want to come in and give you what you don't want, and you don't want to come in and be like, this is not what I paid for. So make sure you're really clear with that when you're communicating. Drywall window returns. Everybody loves it. Everybody's doing these big black windows. We want the seamless look. We don't want big chunky trim anymore. We're essentially turning into your trim carpenters. So keep that in mind. When we are doing drywall window returns, we're doing the trim. We are doing your window trim for you. So there's going to be a price increase. Some people like to just do by window. Some people like to do by stick of corner beads. So you'll get a corner bead stick charge on your bid. So they'll price per stick of corner bead. But it can be a big price increase, especially if there's a lot of windows and a lot of big windows. So keep that in mind also. So determining your drywall board count and square footage. Very important. You can walk into a house and be like, I have, a 3,000 square foot house. That should be 3,000 square foot of drywall, right? No. So you got to think, our plans have our floor square footage, but the drywall is the walls and the ceilings. So there's a really simple formula that you can use, and I have it up here. What we do is we typically take the home's square footage and we times it by 5. So that way we're getting our ceiling footage, and then we're adding 5 for walls. It's a little heavy usually on the board count. You can do 4.5. 5 kind of gives you some extra board to play around with if there's delivery issues, a lot of broken board. That way the hangers can kind of go through and pick and choose what boards they do want to hang. But that can at least get you a rough idea of your drywall square footage. Another thing that you can do is you can also submit your plans to your local drywall supply store, and they can also get a board footage for you and get a count too if you'd rather go that way. But typically when we're bidding, we're going off about times 5 of your floor square footage. So how to prepare for drywall installation. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gotten a call and the hangers are there and they're like, we can't hang anything. There's stuff everywhere. Like there's washers and dryers in the living room. There's plank flooring in the kitchen. The whole cabinet package is delivered. You gotta have the site clean. So when we come in, we need access to everything. All of the ceilings, all of the walls. If there's stuff all over the floor, it's gonna slow us down. It's gonna slow the hanging crew down. You're gonna get charged more, and we might possibly leave and say, we're not starting until this is ready. So when you're looking at bringing in your drywall installers, you need to make sure everything is ready to go. You need to make sure that you also have your rough inspections complete. So you need to have all of your electrical, HVAC, you need to have your wall insulation in. Usually where we are, the ceiling board is hung and then they come in and blow the attic, but it kind of depends on what kind of insulation you're doing, but make sure you have everything buttoned and tidied up. You know, your plumbing is where you want it to be, because if it gets changed later and they have to come and start cutting a bunch of holes, you're gonna get callbacks, or we're gonna get called back and we're gonna charge you. And it's gonna be an hourly charge. You're not gonna be very happy when you get a $5,000 bill because you didn't have your inspections done. So make sure all that stuff is done before the drywall board goes up. Oh yeah, and then climate control. Climate control is incredibly important. When we're looking at drywall board being made out of gypsum, it likes to hold moisture and release moisture. So if you have the drywall board sitting someplace outside and it's really humid, it's gonna suck in all that moisture, and then the board is gonna swell, and then when you go to install it, it can cause major issues later. It can actually cause a lot of stuff with screws. So it can kind of do this phantom thing where your screws are spotted, but there's like a pooch around the screw. Because the board is so swollen and it's holding so much moisture, it can't release it. So make sure when you are getting your drywall board delivered, the site's prepped. If it's real humid, be running some dehumidifiers. If it's cold, put some heat in there. We really prefer electric heat over propane. Propane has a lot of moisture. It slows things down, causes the board to swell, and then also causes cracking. Be a control freak. Maintain at least 50 degrees during the finishing stage. 50 is actually too cold, I would say. We usually like it around 65, and we're using dry heat, so we use the big yellow Fostoria heaters. You know, if it's really, really hot, you're gonna have issues too. So you wanna control how much heat you have in your job also. So if it's like 100 degrees and you're in there taping, everything's gonna dry super fast. You're gonna have like excessive shrinkage because it's not having the proper time to cure the product. So make sure if it's really hot, you're kind of getting some climate control in there. If it's really cold, you're getting climate control, and we're controlling our humidity. And humidity is really important for getting everything to dry also, because we can't coat until everything's dry. So it will slow down your job. And then too much heat or wind. So I have seen jobs where it's been really hot, really windy. You come in the next day and you can almost peel the tape right off the wall because it didn't have that time to bond and to create that connection. So try your best to have all of your windows in, all your doors in, get heat in there, get moisture control, and then get some air conditioning in there for you guys down here where it's really hot so we can control the environment. So here is a job. This is what it looks like before the hangers have started. You can see we have 1/2 inch and 5/8 on this job. Our insulation is in the walls already. This is typically what we're looking at. Everything is empty. As you can see, the floors are empty, the tubs are installed, our electrical is in there, our plumbing, our HVAC, everything that needs to go behind the walls is done and checked. And then these ones, it was during the summer, so all the windows were in. There was no front door in yet and no garage door. The garage door isn't super common. Sometimes they're installed, sometimes not. We prefer them to be installed after we're finished because it's just easier to finish the garage. But there's kind of a look at what we're looking at before we start hanging. And then it's really important also to have proper backing. If there's no backing, there's nothing that we can screw the sheet to. So it's not uncommon to come in and not find angle backing, and angles are where our wall and our ceiling meet. So you need to make sure there's backing there too, because if we can't screw to anything, we can't install the board and it's just gonna be hanging there. So keep that in mind also. And then all of our electrical is done. Some people like to mark on the floors so can lights don't get missed. That's kind of up to you if you want to go through and pre-mark, because can lights do get covered, electrical boxes do get covered pretty frequently. So if you want to keep track of where things are before the hangers start, you can always mark on the floor, take pictures. So if you come in and you're like, there's only 3 cans here, I know there's another can, they probably buried it, you just have to cut it back out. So it's not a huge deal. Okay, why choosing a good hanging crew can make or break your finish. I can't tell you the amount of times I've walked in a job and that I've walked in and I've seen what the hangers have done and I want to quit. And I just want to turn back around and I want to leave that job. They can make a finisher's life really difficult, and they can make your finish not turn out well if they don't know what they're doing. Like, I get it. You want to save money. You're kind of thinking, maybe we cut, back on the drywall a little bit. This guy's bid's $2,000 less. if they're not breaking joints correctly and they're not thinking about what they're going to be doing to us as the finishers, it can create a horrible job. You can have excessive cracking. One thing that I've noticed is if they don't know where to break the boards and they don't think about it and they don't plan it out, you'll have more cracks. Like I can walk into a job and I can see just from where they've hung where it's going to crack. So it's really important that they have finishing in mind when they're hanging, because they're setting us up for success, and we want to be setting you guys up for success when you're not having callbacks 2 years down the road saying, my whole entire ceiling is falling apart. I have screw pops everywhere and all my joints are falling off. So think about that. It is really important. Screw pops are really difficult to fix. If we walk in and the whole house is screw pops, we're going to have to call your hanging crew back and we're not going to be happy. And then there's going to be double the protrusions in the board. So make sure you find a crew that actually knows what they're doing. I know it might cost a little bit more, but your taper is going to be happier, and then you're going to get a better finish. So here, this job is, same job, and this is all hung. So there's a lot that goes into this. I mean, they've hung a lot of these for us. We've probably done 20 of this exact unit, maybe somewhere around there. So they know exactly where to be breaking the board, but they're trying to go ahead and minimize our butt joints. They're standing sheets up where they can, especially in closets, because then we don't have a flat joint to tape. So that saves us time. Our screw pattern here is a little bit different. We do have shear walls. We're in Montana. There's a lot of movement and earthquakes. So shear walls are really common where we are. So make sure too that you're following your local codes, because our screws have to get inspected and we can't start until the screw inspection is started. I don't know if it's like that in every market, but if we walk in and the inspector finds us, he'll kick us off the job and then he'll be like, I can't see what happened. So make sure you're checking with everybody, getting those inspections done and making sure everything is good to go. And then this job is also 9 foot. So those are 54-inch boards. If they had ordered 4-foot boards, there would have been 3 joints compared to 2 joints on the wall. So that's another time when ordering the proper board size is really important. And then the garage here is a little bit over 9. I think it's about 9.3. So you can see they actually had 2 joints there instead of just the one. So they just take the 54-inch and put it at the bottom. So, but keep that in mind too, especially if you're working with 10-foot heights, 12-foot ceilings. We're going to have a little extra joint, but if they do it right, it should be simple for us. What your drywall finisher needs to know before getting started. And this is you need to communicate. If we don't know, we can't do it for you. And as we know, when you walk into a house, you see a lot of walls and ceilings. That's what catches your eye. And if you can spend all the money on the kitchen and the cabinets, but if your walls don't look good, where's the focus going to go? It's going to go on how bad your drywall is. So we need to know the level of finish that you're wanting. So either level 1 through level 5, and we can do different levels in different areas. Something to think about is closets. Like, do I really need to take my closets to a level 5 if they're going to have complete shelving systems in them? Probably not. We could probably get away with a 3 there. Also, where kitchen cabinets, things like that are going, we don't have to finish to the same level as, say, like your vaulted great room with all the raking light across the ceiling. So keep that in mind. What kind of corner bead is being installed? There's a lot of options. There's straight corner bead, there's bullnose, baby bullnose, chamfered. There's an even extra big bullnose. There's a lot of options. So make sure you're communicating, and they should be giving you choices too. Like, they shouldn't just be like, oh, so we're just going to do straight corner bead. Maybe you don't want straight corner bead. Maybe the homeowner comes in and is like, that's not what I wanted at all. We can't just rip it off. So make sure you're really upfront with your choices, you're communicating, and that way we know what to get. Are there any dark, glossy colors? This is really important, especially when we're looking from level 4 to level 5. If we're going really glossy, really dark, really high sheens, we need to know where. Maybe it's just one feature wall. If it's just one wall or one area, we can take that specific area a little bit farther and pay a little more attention to those spots. You know, if you're going to go super dark blue in an entire room, walls and ceilings, and we don't know about it, and then you go in and paint, and then you call us back and you're like, this looks awful, I can see every joint, it's going to be because of the paint choice. So make sure you communicate, walk through, maybe put a little note in the room, like this is gonna go, an accent wall that's gonna be, dark black shiny paint. Can you please take it a little bit further for us? So make sure you're communicating those things. Base height trim is also an important one. When we're looking at doing bullnose, we usually put on transitions. It does depend on the builder, but we will need to know your trim height if you're going with a round corner bead. That way we can get it set correctly so your trim guys can just come right up to that bullnose transition and you can have a clean break there. So that's another important one. And then your kitchen cabinets are important too, because then that way we can know how to finish, where to finish. Sometimes it's just a whole wall of cabinets. Other times we have a strip about that big that's going to be drywall, so we don't need to go any further, which saves us time. How to prepare your drywall finisher for success. Let us have the job. Don't put tile guys in there. Don't be putting somebody else in there that's working on top of us. We can't get it done if somebody else is in the space. So I get it, like people are on timelines, they're like, my tile guy needs to get in here, I gotta get this tile done. It's gonna slow us down immensely, because if we have to work around those guys, we can't get our stuff done, and then he can't get his stuff done sometimes depending on what he's waiting on for us. So your job will go faster and smoother if you just back away, let us have the entire space, and don't put any trades on top of us. And then climate control is really, really important at this stage, because we're gonna be putting a lot of drywall compound on the wall, and if it doesn't have good climate control, it won't dry. And then if it doesn't dry, then we can't coat again, and then your schedule's pushed back further and further. So a lot of climate control. So here's a little bit of drywall lingo. There are drywall flats and there are drywall butts. So right here, this would be a flat. This is where two tapered edges of the drywall board comes together. A butt joint is where two edges that are not tapered come together. So that can either be the end of a drywall sheet, or it can be a sheet that's been cut to fit together. But that one does not have a taper. So butt joints are a little bit different to finish. And then we have an inside angle. So that is where your ceiling is coming up to your wall. So we have vertical angles and then horizontal angles. There are different types of compounds that are available. So we have a setting type, and then we have a ready mix. A setting type is going to be like our Easy Sand 20 over there. These have a chemical reaction, and once they start, once you mix them, the reaction starts. So with like a 20-minute mud, you have about 20 minutes of working time, and that's it, and then it hardens, because these have about 60% plaster of Paris in them. We don't use these for finishing. We will use these for pre-fill. So when we go into a job, we will pre-fill all of our butt joints, any large gaps with that material, and then we will turn around and we will use our ready mix. So ready mix is what you find in the buckets or boxes depending on your area. This just dries. It releases moisture, and as it releases moisture, it dries. So that's why it's super important that we have the climate controls, because it needs to go someplace. But that comes in, you can get +3, you can get all-purpose, all sorts of different varieties of muds are available depending on your market. But we typically use all-purpose to tape with, and then our ready mix goes through all of our automatic tools. We don't use Easy Sand or any sort of setting type in automatic tools. Easy Sand is good for like patches and touch-ups and like big holes in the wall for patching anything. That's typically when we use that. So our setting type has limited working time. It comes in a powdered form, so it'll come in a bag like that. You just add it to water, and then we use it for heavy fills and pre-fill. And then here's just some pre-filling. So this is what we typically do when we come on a job. That's a butt joint right there. So we make sure we always pack those with hot mud to make sure it's like all filled. If we don't, the tape will sink in, and that can cause cracking later also. So we try and always backfill those joints. It just turns out better, wipes down better, and it gives us a better finish in the end. And then our ready mix has no setting time. So that can stay in that container probably for about 2 months if it's climate controlled and if it's put in a safe area. If I leave it outside, it's gonna get moldy, it's gonna dry out. But if I have it inside someplace, like in a garage, it'll be fine for a couple months. It's ready mixed for use. We usually do add water to that. We don't just take it out of the bucket and use it. It's okay, but you're gonna get a much better finish if you add a little bit of water to it. And then we use it for taping and coating. So we use all-purpose for taping, and then we use +3 for our coat work, and then there's also ultra lightweight that is kind of, you can use it for whatever. And then I think there's total, depending on the brand, there's a lot of different options, but typically you're gonna wanna go with an all-purpose like mud for taping, and then +3 or something, a softer mud for your coat work. So here's mixing up a bucket of mud. We're getting ready to go tape. It's the green box. So this is what we typically do. We put it in a bucket. We have our mixer there. We add some water, and then we just give it a quick spin. And what that does is it just makes it super creamy. It's a lot easier to work with. We're not fighting it. We're not getting a lot of air pockets or bubbles, and it's a lot smoother than just scooping out a scoop out of the bucket and just going to the wall with it. Now, there's different types of tape. There is paper tape, fiber fuse, and then mesh tape. I don't really like mesh tape. It is definitely more prone to cracking. Mesh tape you have to use with easy sand. There's no question about it. You cannot use mesh tape with all-purpose or +3 because mesh tape gets its strength from easy sand. So if you see somebody come onto your job or you're trying to do some patchwork and they have mesh tape and they're putting it on with +3, no, it's not gonna work. It's just gonna crack immensely. So you need to make sure mesh tape goes with all-purpose, or sorry, with easy sand. Fiber fuse, this is actually what's on this wall right here. This is a fiberglass kind of mesh tape, and it's really nice because you can see how it goes on the wall. It kind of like absorbs into the mud, and you can also see where your blisters are and things really easily. That can't be used in angles. It rips, it's real thin, and you'll have major problems with it later. So that can only go on flats and butts. Some people only use it on flat joints. It is really nice for patching though. It's quite a bit thinner than mesh tape. So we found it's a lot easier to get that to patch in. And then we have paper tape. So paper tape is paper. It's a pre-creased product. So it's really nice for angles. I have some right over here. It comes in different foot rolls, 250 or 500 feet. But this has two sides, so it has a creased side and then an indented side, but it's really nice for using in angles because being pre-creased, it'll go ahead and give you a nice corner. Don't use mesh tape in angles either. This really is the only product that should be going in any 90-degree angle. It's the only one that's gonna give you a good finish. Right, Danny? We just went through that. So here we are getting our automatic taper ready to tape. So depending on your crew and what you're doing, you might or might not use automatic tools. We're a professional contractor that does drywall finishing, so we have all of the fancy tools because they speed it up so much, but some people do hand tape. But this is an automatic taper here, and we're getting it set up. And then there's a bunch of automatic drywall tools. There's an automatic taper, flat boxes, angle heads. There's also boxes that the angle heads go on. There's poles, all sorts of things. So if you're hiring a professional crew, some still do hand tape and they will do everything by hand, but typically we are coming in with all of these tools and they're very fast. I don't think, like if you guys are taping your own jobs, like maybe it's like a room or something, or you're just like doing like a remodel or a little addition, you're not gonna need this stuff. It's very expensive, so that's something to keep in mind. You know, our automatic taper is about $1,800. So if you're like doing one thing or something small, don't go get this. It doesn't make any sense. But for us, it makes a lot of sense. So that automatic taper speeds up our taping. We can run butts, flats, and angles with this, so it gets all the tape on those areas for us. And then we use it with ready mix only, and it can be used with paper tape or fiber fuse. You cannot put mesh tape in any of the automatic taping tools. It doesn't work because it's kind of like a sticky tape, so it'll just get caught in the tool. So here's an example. This is us running some flats here. So this tool puts on the mud and the tape at the same time. So typically for us, if we're walking into about a 250 sheet house, we can get all the tape on within a couple hours. And then that speeds it up. So then the next day we can come in and we can start coating everything. So typically 250 board house would probably take us about a week or so with these tools, maybe faster depending on the complexity. So after the tape is applied, then you come in and you just wipe it down. And as you can see, that's paper tape there. We have our mud behind, which is really important for the strong bond. And then we just go ahead and get it all wiped. And then that's a butt joint right there. And then this is the process for angles. So as you can see, the paper tape is in there, it's creased in there. And it's really important when you are doing angles that you're making sure that tape is in there tight. Because you can get, if you have rounded angles, you can't fix it. You're gonna have to start floating and coating everything out. So make sure you're using paper, it's pre-creased, and you have it in there tight. So that's Ryan there running the tube. And this is all 8 foot on this one, but you can see the shear wall pattern back there too. So after it's applied, then we roll it. And even if you're doing small stuff, some of these tools like the roller and the angle head can really speed up your angle process and give you a better finish too. You don't have to use these with the tube. You can totally put on your mud by hand, put your paper tape on there, and then come through with these tools. But it really creases it down, and then our angle head here gets right into the angle and then gives us a nice coat on our angle tape to get us started. But angle tools, if you're looking at getting anything, will definitely speed up the process immensely. Or even if you're thinking of buying something for your crew, angle tools. Angle tools are great. And then after that's done, we come through and we pick that 3-way corner there. This is when having climate control is really important because there's a lot of mud back behind those angles. And if you don't have everything kind of drying, we can come in sometimes 2 or 3 days later and that will still be wet. So make sure you have good airflow, good movement, even in the back bathrooms, back bedrooms, wherever it is so that things can be dry. So here's our corner bead shapes. These are the most typical, are bullnose, straight, and chamfer. Bullnose is going to cost more because we do have to miter all of the corners to fit together. If you have a lot of 3-way outside corners coming together, we have to get a specialty piece to put on there. I've never been able to cut it to make 3 pieces of bullnose come together perfectly. So keep that in mind when you are choosing that. Bullnose kind of gives you a nice, soft, rounded look. Some people love it, some people hate it. Total personal preference. Straight or 90-degree corner bead is our most common. It's the most modern look that you're going to find. It's easiest to install. It's fast to install. The thing I love about straight is that we can manipulate that more than a round corner. So if you have some really wonky framing going on, maybe think about that too, because bullnose is going to be a little bit trickier. And you do need to hang differently also for bullnose compared to straight. The board needs to be cut back a little bit differently. So make sure you communicate too with your hangers if we're going bullnose, straight, or chamfer, which is a mix between the two, has a front face and then it has the tapered sides. And that's a really cool look. It's getting more popular. It's a little bit different. I haven't seen a ton of it, but it is an option. And then we have different bead options. We use all of these. It all depends on the house, the framing, and even the environment. So our most go-to is a composite stick. So that is usually like no coat. Clark Dietrich has a composite stick. Those ones hold up really well because they don't have all the metal and like they take an impact better. Like an old metal stick, like the tin sticks, not the tin sticks, but the steel sticks, if you hit those really hard, they're gonna crack. And you're gonna have big busted spots and they're gonna dent a ton. So depending on how high traffic your area is, you might wanna go with a composite. There's also vinyl. Vinyl's great for bathrooms. If you have a really high moisture area, vinyl can be a great choice. That one comes in the most options for install. There is a mud in, and then there's also a, what am I trying to say there? Glue. So you can use glue or you can use mud with those products. There's a couple different options. Metal, I still love it. It has its place. It's really good for fixing bad framing. So if I walk into a job and I see a soffit and I look down the soffit and it's snaking like this, it's a lot easier to manipulate a metal product than it is to manipulate a paper face product or a structural laminate, which is going to follow that line. So that's something to think about too. If you walk in and they maybe have all of these products out, they're not doing it wrong. They're just choosing the best product for the application. So We do use metal too if we're trying to get, there's big windows and everything's coming together to one point to meet and it all needs to line up, or all of our window reveals need to be super straight. We're typically going to go with a metal product. This is installing, this is no coat. So we're just throwing it through our Clark Dietrich Mud Pro, and this is a mud-on product. It is very fast to install. It is incredibly quick. It does lie really flat, and it's nice too for the trim carpenters because there's no nose bump on that, so they can just come in and put their trim on real tight in the corners. But this isn't always the best option because it will 100% follow framing. So if it's real wonky, something's funky, you're gonna see it because we can't hold it off or manipulate that product because it needs the mud to hold it into place. All right, finish levels. You guys ready for this one? There are 5 levels. So level 0 is when the drywall board is hung. So that's just you walk in, drywall board's up, that's our level 0. Our level 1 is gonna be this right here. So our seams will be taped, our screws will be spotted, and then our corner bead would be installed. This most typically is found in garages. So this would be like a fire tape. This would be above grid. We do this a lot in garages if you just want to have the seams coated and you need to pass inspection. Anything like that, that's going to be our 1. What is appropriate with the 1 is you will have some lines. You can have some heavy edges. There can be some things going on there. It's not going to be perfect. This is literally like get the tape on, get the screws on, pass your fire code inspection or whatever you need to. Or, you're going to put kitchen cabinets all over this wall, anything like that, we're going to go with a 1. So this example right here is a 2 or this would be a 3 or a 4 really right here. So once we start moving up levels, we start feathering out further on these joints right here. So for a level 2, this would have a coat with about a 10-inch. Some people do an 8, it's fine, 8 or 10, either one is great. But then we would have our first coat on here, and then we would move to our level 3, which is where we're having 2 coats on everything. So at that point, our angles are coated again. We've coated our flat out further, and we're starting to feather farther out. So we're moving to, typically if you've done an 8, you're gonna move to a 10. If you've done a 10, you're gonna move to a 12. So our joint should be getting nice and feathered out here. When we're moving to a 3, you can still have some imperfections. We're not looking for perfection here. We're gonna be covering this up with texture. It's gonna be kind of hidden, it's okay. And then when we move to a 4 is when we want little to no imperfections. So we're looking at 3 coats when we get to a level 4. So we've got now, sometimes we do a 12 again, sometimes we move to a 14. Depends on the job, but that joint should be feathered out. It should be smooth. There should be no pock marks. There should be no pinholes. There should be no trash lines, no heavy edges. Like you should be able to come in there, prime it, and if you're doing a flat white, should look pretty dang good. Now then we get to level 5. And you can see here, you can still see all of the coats through this level 5. And I think it's really important because people think level 5 is this big, thick, heavy coat on the walls. It's not. It's not at all. The only thing we're doing with the level 5 is we're getting rid of this exposed paper face here, and that's it. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to fix anything. We're not trying to float out any joints. And I think people think like, okay, level 5 will fix my bad level 4. It's not going to. That's not the purpose of it at all. The purpose of it is to just get rid of this paper face. So before you get to a 5, make sure your 4 is good. Like talk to your drywall finishers, maybe walk the house a little bit, point out some areas that maybe you're not super happy with or that you would like to get fixed before we go to this 5. Now, is a 5 appropriate everywhere? Absolutely not. It is very expensive. You have to think it's very labor intensive. We're touching every single piece of that drywall board with mud to get rid of this paper face. So every inch of your ceilings, every inch of your walls is gonna get hit with mud to get rid of the paper face. There's a couple different ways that we can do a level 5. You can do it by hand. So typically if it's one wall in an area, so you have a big feature wall, you're gonna be having a bunch of light raking across it, you're gonna have an artwork or a showcase wall. That's great for a level 5. Dark rooms, dark areas, do they need to go 5? No, not necessarily. You can probably get away with a 4 there. Same thing with really dark paints, glossy paints. If you have like a really thin wallpaper or something like that going on, a 4 should be fine. If it's a thicker wallpaper, you could probably go to a 3, I would say. Like we've done some in the hospitals where we can typically get away with a 3 with that real thick paper, but if we're getting into the super delicate stuff that's getting more and more popular, that's really pretty, you want to go to at least a 4. Another place where a 5 is great is, you know, if you're really looking for something super smooth, and like in Matt's personal house, if you do the tour in there, they did white walls and they have white molding on top. So they went ahead and 5'd that, and it literally looks like it's part of the wood paneling. It's so super smooth. So kind of think about, where's my interior design going? What do I want? What are the clients expecting? Are they expecting to walk in and see absolute perfection? Like they don't want to see any seams, anything anywhere? Or are they okay with having maybe some slight imperfections in some areas, and then a 4 might be more appropriate there? 1, again, good for garages, anything like that, especially if you're just going to be putting a bunch of you know, storage stuff on there. It's going to be completely covered with some kind of cabinetry. 1 is fine. So here is our level 1. As you can see, we've got our flats taped, our butts taped, our angles taped, screws spotted, and then all of our corner bead is on and installed. It's not coated yet, it's just on. So here's the same one again. This is our level 2. So we have 1 coat on our flats, our butts are split, screws are still left because we spotted them from before. And then our level 3 here, we've got our can circled because the way they broke that board, if we don't circle it, you're gonna have a hard edge there. So we have our level 3, so we've got 2 coats on our flats. Our butts are split, are actually run down the center because they've been split already. 2 coats on all the corner bead. Our boxes are crossed off. So where those boxes are, we can't run the boxes, we can't run our, well, I would say where the boxes are, we can't run the boxes, but we can't run the tools over them. So we have to go ahead and go ahead and circle those and make sure those are tidied up too. And then here is a level 4 that we did. So as you can see, there's still exposed board, but all that corner bead is all coated. This was a nice arch soffit feature. So we went ahead and did that, but this is our 4 here. So our butts now have been pulled 3 times. So they get 1 more pull across the whole thing. Our flats have been hit 3 times. Our screws have been hit 3 times. And then our corner bead has been hit 3 times. So they went with a flat white paint in here, which actually turned out perfect. And then all of our stuff is circled too. And here's a level 5. So as you can see, no exposed paper at all on that drywall. We actually came in and sprayed with a speed flow. So we kind of made a mud paint mix, sprayed it on everything, and then we come back and then we sand the walls down. So we don't dust this before we spray it, we just spray it. And then we come and we take really, really soft sanding paper. We're looking at like 320. And we just really nicely go up and down on the walls, get rid of any high points. We're knocking the sand down. And when you come in, they feel like butter soft. They feel great. But as you can see, it's light. You can still see a lot of the coat work behind it because our coat work is there. All we're doing is getting rid of that paper face. So that's ready for the painter to come in. They back roll typically on the first coat with their prime coat. They still need to prime after this. Like level 5 isn't gonna save you from not priming. You still have to prime, like always prime, 100%. But they will come in and they will prime and then typically back roll their primer, and then they'll come back with their 2 finished coats of paint. But that is an example of a level 5, no exposed paper face anywhere. So it is a lot of work. I mean, it took us a couple hours to spray that, masking, all of those things. So do keep that in mind. And then you can see here, we have our full wrap windows. So this job was a lot of work. There was a lot of corner bead in that job, big windows, lots of wraps. They decided to go with the full wrap against black doors. So it was a little interesting to try and figure this one out, but it turned out really nice. And then there's texture. Common textures, we do a swirl where I am. I don't think it's super common down here, but it's common where I am. We do a lot of that. Skip trowel, orange peel, and then custom hand textures. Sometimes a great option, especially if you're working with somebody on a budget and they want that smooth look, but they don't want to pay for it everywhere, is you can do a textured ceiling and then you can do a smooth wall. That's extremely common. Kind of cuts down on your costs because we're not having to spend all that time on floating out big lids or ceilings, but that's a great way to do it. You can do a nice orange peel knockdown, and if you have real high ceilings, you're not gonna see it. It's gonna look smooth and it'll save your finisher time. This is our swirl, so we're actually using Fast Tex. We use a lot of mud for this. We put it in a big trough, add a bunch of water, thin it down, and then we spray it on the wall. And this takes a lot of water. It takes a little bit for this job to dry out. If it's real cold too, we can have some freezing problems, so we have to make sure we really have our climate maintained. But it gets real thin, and then we spray it through a big industrial sprayer. So this is what we spray on the walls. This is just our mud and water mix, and then we come through and then swirl with the pull trowel. It's kind of a Bozeman thing. It's really Montana thing, but it turns out really nice. It looks really flat. It's kind of a nice option too for ceilings or anything like that, but it just kind of gives you a really soft, swirly pattern. And we can do it pretty quickly. We can usually get through a duplex in, about 2 to 3 hours with 3 of us. But it's pretty fun. People love it. We actually do a lot of commercial in swirl too, which is interesting. And then we have a skip trowel here. Our skip trowel is a little bit different. I don't know if that's popular in the Texas area, but people like it in Montana. It's a little bit heavier of a texture. And then orange peel. So orange peel is typically sprayed through a sprayer like that. You can do bigger rigs. You can do pull behind rigs. But it just creates a fine texture like an orange peel. And I did not spot those screws. Nobody on our crew did. We had a new guy, so that's why they look like that. But that's kind of our orange peel texture there. That's extremely fast. You can spray out a house really quickly with orange peel within a couple of hours, if even a large one. But that needs to go to a level 3 that is touched up if you are doing orange peel, because it is such a light texture. All right, and that's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me for Drywall 101.